He wears the crown for somebody that you don't want to be. He had it all. He started with everything, but then it all fell apart. Everything that he intended to accomplish, it got crowded out, overlooked, distracted, got diverted, put off till later, and eventually he forgot to do the most important things. When I tell you his name, I know you're going to be a bit surprised. All of you are going to say to me, "Oh, come on. He can't be that bad." I always thought he was one of the most shining examples of Old Testament giants in Hebrew lore. Well, he wasn't. His name was Solomon, king of Israel. He was the son of David. I've entitled today's lesson, Getting Distracted. Do you find things pull you away from what's really important? They tell me today parents only spend 3 minutes a day of quality time raising their adolescent kids. In Great Britain, they just had a national election, and their new prime minister, I really admire the guy. I don't know who he is. But he said, when I become prime minister, I'm not going to be distracted by my Friday nights because I have 2 young teenagers. And every Friday night, we have spent the whole night together, their mom and my kids, just getting to know life and having fun. If the Prime Minister of Great Britain can tell those that are in Secret Service and the rest around him protecting him, just stay away a little while, I'm going to have the whole night to myself, don't bother me, I turn my phone off, let me be alone. When I'm driving my car now, I don't have my radio on. Traffic in our city is so fast, and I find the other drivers now are so bad, I have to pay attention to my knitting. And I keep an eye on my 3 mirrors. And those 3 mirrors, I know where everybody is coming and going, especially motorcycles, because they're very dangerous drivers. Does your busy life get crowded out by your cell phone? Do you spend a lot of time on the internet? Sports? Investments? TV? Well, you're not alone. Solomon's biggest problem in life was really the same as yours. He got too busy. And he forgot life's fundamentals. Well, it's easy to lose your attention and get your eyes off the ball. That very thing was Solomon's downfall. He turned away. His outside attractions, they suddenly became his enemies. Let me give you a little background to Solomon. David and Bathsheba were his parents. Nathan the prophet, he gave him his name, Solomon. It meant love of the Lord. Solomon, he was the successor to the throne of David as king of Israel. And no sooner did he sit on the throne when he had this conversation with God. I'll read it for you. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 6. God said to Solomon, "Now that you're the king, what can I get for you? Just ask me." Solomon replied, "You are extravagantly generous, Lord, in your love for my father David, and he lived faithfully in your presence, and his relationships were just, and his heart was right. And you have persisted in this generous love by giving him to this very day a son, me, to sit on his throne. And now here I am, God. You're my God. You have made me, and you've made me your servant, the ruler over this kingdom in place of my father David. Now, These next words that Solomon is going to utter are probably the best words that he ever said. Here they are. I'm too young for this job. I'm a mere child. I don't know the ropes. I hardly know the ins and outs of this job. And here I am, set down in the middle of a people that you have chosen, a great people, far too many for me to even count. After speaking these words, listen to this request that he makes of God. You asked me, Lord, here's what I want. I want you to give me a listening heart so that I can lead your people. Have you ever asked for that? A listening heart? There on your job? Married to your wife? Raising your kids? Dreaming about your future? I think that's the best request that anyone could ever ask, especially when you feel that you're too young and maybe you're just like a mere child. Solomon was only 20 years old when he asked this of God. What do you think God told him? Here's his answer. Because you have asked for this, Solomon, for the ability to lead and your ability to govern well, I'm going to give you what you asked for. I'm going to give you a wise and mature heart, full of understanding. No one before you or no one after you is going to be as wise as you. And on top of that, I'm going to give you a bonus. I'm going to give you wealth and glory, and I'm also going to give you a long life. How's that for guidance? For a young 20-year-old, starting out on a new job, new king, in a new empire. I'm a child, he said. I don't know the ropes. God said to him, you showed me humility, Solomon. Then God answered his prayer. I'll give you what you asked for, and I'll help you grow. All of you can ask for the same thing. Listen to James chapter 1, verse 5. If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help you. You'll get his help, and he won't turn you away when you ask. But when you ask boldly, believing, without a second thought, that he's going to give it to you. That day, Solomon got wisdom. He got a clear mind for domestic decisions, and he made a lot of them. That day, he got a broad understanding for the commercial adventures that he's going to advance. There's going to be brand new trade routes that are going to go through his nation. God's going to allow him to think that through and get it. He's going to be a wise diplomat. He's going to manage the affairs of justice from his throne. He's going to be respected by every nation all around. Other leaders of other nations are going to come and visit him and see how did he do it. Because David was a man of war, God told him, your request, David, to build my temple in Jerusalem, I won't do. I won't let you do that. I won't allow it. I'm going to let your son Solomon come after you, and he's going to build it for me. And it was a beautiful structure. It was just like one of the best 7 wonders of the world. Solomon took 7 years to build that temple. Cedar from Lebanon, marble and precious stone from his own quarries. Laborers from afar, craftsmen from every other country, they came to work on that temple. Gold walls, silver ornaments, precious archways, fabulous design, built on a hill, When the sun in its brightness sparkled off its jasper walls, you could see that temple for miles. When the temple was dedicated, 1 Kings 8:17, Solomon speaking said this, "My father David, he had it in his heart to build this temple. I have now built it in his name. God today has gotten his wish. I have completed the temple to honor my God, and I have secured a place for him, keeping in this city his covenant." Having said this, I know what you're going to ask me. You said, Ron, at the start of this lesson, that Solomon wears the crown for somebody that I'm not supposed to be. Well, here's where Solomon now falls apart. And it could happen to you. Maybe you've already fallen apart. So you're probably going to agree with what I'm going to tell you. Solomon lost sight of his calling. Have you lost sight of yours? After he spent 7 years building God's temple, he spent the next 13 years building his own palace. And it took so long because he had to keep adding on extensions. If you read Ecclesiastes 2, verse 4, Solomon never slowed down. He built houses, he planted vineyards, he designed gardens, he developed parks, he planted thousands of fruit trees, and then he dug pools of water to irrigate the groves. He acquired large herds and flocks, and he piled up silver and gold, and he gathered singers and musicians to entertain him in song. Solomon got so busy that he had no time left for God. Remember when he started out, he asked God, and God told him, "I'm going to give you a wise and mature heart, but you have to listen to me, and I will guide you." He got too busy to listen. Are you too busy to listen? There was a teacher asking her little girls in her class to describe a grandmother. Here was one of the observations of one of these little girls talking about her grandmother. "My grandma is a lady who has no small children of her own. Grandma doesn't have to do anything except be there. They're old and they don't play hard. And when they take walks, they like to slow down. And they look at pretty leaves and little caterpillars. They never say hurry up. And they wear glasses and funny underwear. And they can take their teeth and gums off. Grandmothers don't have to be smart. Everybody should have a grandmother, especially like mine. If you don't have a television like me, grandmothers are the only grown-ups who have time for me." Solomon could learn from that little girl. He didn't take time to listen. God spoke to him often. He wasn't paying attention. When God spoke to him, he wasn't there. Have you listened? 4.5 centuries before Solomon came to the throne in Israel, Moses gave orders on choosing a king, what the king was to be like. Here's what he said: "Make sure you get a king whom God chooses. Make sure God makes the choice for your king. Don't build up a harem collecting wives who are going to steal you away from God's will." Solomon didn't listen to that advice. He set out to do things his way when he became king. 1 Kings 11, starting at verse 1, kind of gives you an indication of what he did. Solomon was obsessed with women. Pharaoh's daughter was the first of many foreign women that he loved. Then came a Moabite, then an Ammonite. Then he married an Edomite, one from Sidonia, a Hittite. He took them from the surrounding pagan nations, of which God clearly warned them, you will never take a wife from a foreign nation. You must not marry them because they're going to seduce you and they're going to lead their God into you becoming their follower, and it's going to go into idolatry. Well, Solomon, he fell in love with them anyway. He had 700 royal wives and 300 concubines, and together they stole Solomon's heart away from his God. Years ago, one of my boys came home from Sunday school, and he said to me, Dad, did you know that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 cucumber vines? I told him if he had that many ladies in the house, it's going to take a lot of pickles at their mealtime. Solomon was led astray, and he didn't practice what he preached. He said that he would follow the Lord with all his heart. He didn't. But the man wasn't stupid. Did you know that he wrote half the book of Proverbs? The book of Proverbs, they're wonderful sayings of wisdom. I suppose you could call it almost God's drugstore in the Old Testament. It's full of pills, and these little pills, if you take them as an ailment, they're going to correct you as a good example, and I think every doctor would prescribe them. Certainly pastors should. Let me give you some. Better is a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. Isn't that a good pill? Here's what he said about temptation. It's a smooth-talking seductress. No one who joins her in that company is going to ever come back. He should know that. Solomon says this about wisdom. You are blessed when you meet Lady Wisdom. She's worth more to you than all your money in the bank. Do you know what Solomon thinks referring to one of his wives? He said this, the lips of a seductive woman are oh so sweet, but it won't be long before she's gravel in your mouth. Do you like this one? The mouth of a good person is a deep, life-giving well, but the mouth of a wicked is a dark cave of abuse. One more. When right living people bless the city, it flourishes. Evil talk turns it into a ghost town. Solomon's problem, he was too preoccupied. He spent so much time with his projects and chasing these new wives that he had no time left for the Lord. Do you get preoccupied? Solomon spent 7 years building the temple, 13 years building a spacious mansion. I'll spend time with the Lord later, he thought. I'll catch up then. Do you want to know what Satan's secret weapon is in this world? Preoccupation. Just put it off for a little. That little becomes very chilling. Emptiness. Chasing the wind. Solomon then began to have bitter regrets. The wisest man on earth that ever lived. He writes this in Ecclesiastes. He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. It's too late. He left life behind him. Now he's tired. He's an old man. Solomon turned his heart away, got distracted. His wisdom and riches that didn't really satisfy him now. That's what Satan does. Satan rigs your world to throw you off your game. Has he thrown you off your game? One of the last things that Solomon wrote is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, beginning at 1. He's telling what he's now sorry for. His whole life is now almost over. He's looking back, and here's what he says. Honor and enjoy your Creator while you're still young, before the years take their toll and your vigor wanes, before your wisdom dims and your world blurs. The winter years keep you now close to the fire. In old age, your body no longer serves you very well. Muscles slacken, grips weaken, joints stiffen. The shades are pulled down on your world, and you can't come and go at will anymore. Things just seem to grind to a halt. Let those last words of Solomon speak to you. His life started coming and going, not at his will. From the beginning, his reign, God was the center. And then he got preoccupied, distracted, off his game. Things ground to a halt. Then all was vanity. Did you know that your world is out to grind you down and bring you to a halt? I want to close this lesson with something that I found very disturbing. And I don't want you to let this happen to you, nor to your kids. Do you want to know how wicked our world has become? You can take your cell phone or your home phone, call a phone number in China, a chemical company, and they're going to sell you something. And they're going to airship some chemicals and ingredients to your door here in North America, and you can purchase enough chemicals to make 3 million pills. And it's only going to cost you a few cents. And it's an illicit synthetic opioid. And it's called fentanyl. And it's building, and when you build it, it's surprisingly simple. It's just a simple chemistry. Let me tell you the science behind fentanyl. It all comes to your door by Amazon or maybe UPS in a little cardboard box the size of a loaf of bread. Illicit fentanyl is a very powerful drug. It's 50 times more powerful than heroin. And they look like little ordinary pills. They usually come in the color of blue. An average pill contains 3 milligrams of fentanyl. But those that make it back here in North America, they use crude pressings. And those little presses that they use, you're not going to be getting 2 milligrams. You may get as many as 8 or 10 milligrams. And they're going to do it in their basement or maybe in their garage. And if you take one of those pills, you're playing with Russian roulette. Those street pills sold to your kids last year killed 75,000 Americans. These statistics are U.S. stats. Remember, it's a synthetic drug. It's not created from plants. Marijuana comes from a plant, so does cocaine. This doesn't come from a plant. It's an entire chemical. And when it comes in the mail from China, it looks like a pre-mixed brownie batter. And one of the chemicals in that powder that makes your fentanyl, it's a sedate medication. And it's 100 times more potent than most drugs. It's a drug that's used in that pre-brownie mix. Millions of these packages, they fly around the world every day, and they're very, very difficult to detect. Just do the math. $1,000 worth of fentanyl mix can make 800 times the original investment. That's how wicked this world has become that you and I live in. I want you to teach your children to say no. God tried to teach Solomon to say no. He didn't say no. This lesson is about a very, very wise man, the wisest man that ever lived. Wrote the book of Proverbs, wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, but he didn't know how to say no. He didn't listen. This lesson for you that I want you to listen. When you come back next week, there's a man in the New Testament that maybe you don't know. And I'm going to tell his story just like I told the Solomon story. And his name is Nicodemus. Have you ever heard of him? Well, when you come back next time, I'll tell you who he was. Until then, you have a good week.